Dear students, in the last few lectures, our chapter number 1, auditing, has been completed. In last chapter, we learned about auditing. In that unit, we considered with what is meant by auditing, silent features of auditing, nature of auditing, advantages or importance of auditing, and difference between accounting and auditing, etc. In the present lecture, we are going to discuss on unit number 2. In unit number 2, there are various concepts of which presently we are concerned with vouching. Vouching is an important component of auditing. I am Dr. V.K. Sawant. So, dear students, we are directly concerned with vouching. It is an important part of auditor's duty to certify as correct the transaction recorded in the books of accounts. In every business, n number of transactions are happening. Therefore, need arises to record such transaction properly by considering accountancy principles. Therefore, it is duty of an auditor to see correctness of the transactions recorded in the books of accounts. It is also noted that every transaction must be supported by proper evidence, which could prove that the transaction has actually taken place. Without any documentary evidence, no transaction will be recorded in the books of accounts. It means that every transaction has a required documentary evidence. On the basis of such documentary evidence, an accountant or concerned clerk is going to record the transaction in the books of accounts. Documentary evidence are the base of recording of any transaction. No documents, no recording of financial transactions. Therefore, documentary evidence is an essential aspect which will be considered while recording the transactions in the books of accounts. A documentary proof of evidence in support of a transaction is called a voucher. So it is noted that what is to be called as a voucher. Voucher means any documentary proof of evidence. There are various examples of vouchers. Firstly, we got information voucher is a proof having documentary nature. So there are various types of vouchers, but here we are concerned with examples of vouchers, that is also known as Forms of vouchers. Generally, vouchers are in the following forms. For our proper understanding, I have recorded here the forms of vouchers by considering certain features. Firstly, there are certain common vouchers. The examples of common vouchers are memorandum of the company, articles of association regarding company, agreements, deeds, contracts. Here, agreement means the terms and conditions decided by two parties. Every agreement or contract requires minimum two parties. Therefore, agreement or deed or contract is also treated as proof as voucher. Minute books, inward and outward register, bank passbook, salaries and wage sheets, attendance register, counterfoils, stores records, correspondence, etc. These are common vouchers. It is useful to record any kind of transaction. These are the examples of common vouchers which are essential for recording any kind of financial transaction in the books of accounts. Another examples of vouchers as related to sales are sales orders. It means sales orders, we are giving or delivering goods to another parties by considering the demand given by that party. So sale orders, delivery challenge, sales invoices, goods outward register, statement of debtors, cash receipts, bank pay-in slips, credit notes or credit memos or credit memorandums, that is termed as sales returns, etc. These are the vouchers which are directly related with sales. Sales means sales made by the business organization. Sales is important for generation of revenue to the business. Another examples of vouchers as regarded purchase. The examples of vouchers regarding purchase are quotations, purchase orders, purchase invoices, goods inward registered, statements of creditors, debit notes or debit memorandums, that is purchase returns. These are the vouchers related to purchase transaction. In business, mostly two types of transactions are happening: purchase transaction and sales transaction. So in relation to purchase transaction, these are the examples of vouchers that are treated useful while recording transactions. Another vouchers as related to cash payments. While making payment in terms of cash, these are the examples of cash payments such as demand notes, cash receipts, cash memos, etc. On the contrary, if the transaction or transactions is or are related to cash received for that purpose, the examples of vouchers are duplicate or carbon copy of cash receipts, contracts, correspondence with payee, etc. From this discussion, we generalize correspondence, any kind of correspondence is treated as voucher. Then transactions related with bank payments. The examples of vouchers are checks, counterfoils, bank statements, etc. By considering the nature of transaction, we are now concerned with payment received through banking channels. It means that where transactions occurred through banks, certain documentary evidence considered here. The examples of vouchers as related to payment received through banking channels are bank deposit slips, bank statements, etc. Last part of vouchers, that is termed as miscellaneous vouchers. Examples of miscellaneous vouchers are receipts, bills, purchase requisition slips, gatekeeper's book, dividend warrants, interest warrants, broker's note, investment certificates, tender, or in the present age, e-tender notices, certificates from architect, engineer, solicitor, valuer, etc. So these are the examples of vouchers, and these vouchers are essential and proof for recording especially financial transactions in the books of accounts. Now I am focusing on what is meaning of vouching and definitions of vouching. Previously, in the present lecture, we got information about what is meant by voucher. Voucher is any documentary evidence of proof. So, proving is seen in vouching. Vouchers means any documentary support. So, now we concerned with meaning of voucher. Vouching means examination of the entries in the books of accounts with sufficient written evidences to satisfy the auditor himself about the authenticity, accuracy, validity, and authority of records. Vouching means testing the truth of items appearing in the books of original entry. In order to verify truthness of original entry, vouching is essential aspect. Vouching is the process of analyzing vouchers of the business enterprise. There are certain definitions given by different authorities. First definition is given by Ronald A. Irish. That definition is: vouching is a technical term which refers to the inspection of documentary evidence supporting and substanting by the auditor. Another definition is given by Lawrence R. Dixie. Vouching as comparing entries in the books of accounts with documentary evidence in support thereof. Third definition, that definition is given by Spicer and Pegler. Vouching is examination by the auditor of all documentary evidences which are support the authenticity of the transaction entered in the client's record. In this definition, the authors have given focus on documentary evidence that should be checked by the auditor and that are available with authenticity and entered in the client's record. From the above meaning and definitions, it can be observed that by considering the meaning of vouching, by considering various definitions given by the authorities, we observed that vouching is a technical term. Technical means which is essential aspect and supporting aspect in the form of documentary evidence. Vouching is not merely to check the records of accounts but to verify the proofs of transactions recorded. Those transactions recorded in the books of accounts should be checked by the auditor by considering the documentary evidence regarding them. Vouching is an examination of vouchers. It means that in vouching, the auditor has required to carry examination of available vouchers. Vouching is the process of ascertainment of correctness and authenticity of the entries made in the books of accounts. Vouching ascertains that all transactions are related to business and there is no omission in recording the transactions and that the entries have been properly made in the books of accounts. Firstly, we note that all business transactions are recorded in the books of accounts. No private transactions are recorded in the business transaction. Vouching ascertains that the transaction have actually taken place and the transactions are within the limits of authority. Only happened events or transactions are recorded in the books of accounts, and that should be checked by the auditor in vouching. Anticipated transactions, likely to be happen transactions, are not considered here. It is the first step in auditing. It means that vouching is the first stage of auditing. Vouching is the base of auditing. It is related to the prime document of evidence and entries in the primary books. As vouching examines the truth of transactions entered in the company's accounts, it is known as an acid test of the audit. These are the things which are directly related with vouching. So, firstly, we learned about nature of vouching, what is meant voucher, what is meant by vouching, and what are the certain things as related to the vouching. Now we are focusing on objectives of vouching. Vouching is the base of auditing. So there are certain objectives of vouching. The first objective of vouching is to find out regularity and irregularity of transactions, frauds and errors. Regularity and irregularity. These two terms are different. In regularity shows sense of honesty, irregularity shows sense of dishonesty. So regularity and irregularity, both things we are going to consider. The basic objective of vouching is to find out what are the regularities and what are the irregularities. Also find out frauds and errors. Another objective of vouching is to confirm that all business transactions have been recorded properly with accuracy in the respective books of accounts. In vouching, the auditor should check that all transactions are pertaining to the business, that transactions have been properly recorded, means while recording these transactions, accounting principles are taken into consideration. Another objective of vouching is to confirm that the transactions are recorded as related to business. It means that the transactions recorded in the books of accounts are directly associated with the business activities. To confirm that the transactions are actually taken place, it means that imaginary transactions, likely to be happen transactions, are not considered here. Actual transactions are recorded in the books of accounts, and the auditor should see that the documentary evidence as pertaining to actual transaction happened in the business organization. To ensure that vouchers have been carefully processed through each stage of an effective system of internal check. Internal check system is an arrangement made by the management and in which the allocation of work is given and the work done by one employee is checked by another employee and no single employee has a right to record entire aspects of a particular transaction. So there are certain processes followed in internal check system. In that processes, it is possible to identify or detect errors or frauds at early stage. Therefore, in vouching, it is necessary to ensure that vouchers have been carefully processed. Another objective of vouching is to ensure that vouchers are properly authorized. Here we can note that authority sanction is must. Without authority sanction, no transaction will occur and no transaction will recorded. It so there are certain restrictions on authorities. By considering the limit of authorities, the auditor should ensure that the vouchers are properly authorized. To ensure that all transactions have sufficient documentary evidences, it is the duty of an auditor to satisfy himself about the vouching process followed by the organization. Therefore, auditor should see that all transactions which are recorded in the books of accounts have sufficient documentary evidence. No transaction has been recorded without support of documentary evidence. To ensure that no fraudulent transactions are recorded, there are three types of frauds. Number one, misappropriation cash. Number two, misappropriation of goods. And number three, manipulation in the books of accounts. That related with the fraudulent transactions. So auditor should ensure that no fraudulent transactions are recorded. Therefore, these objectives indicate that truthness, truthness of the transaction, happened transactions, authorized transaction, the transactions having documentary supports are to be recorded in the books of accounts. So, in the present discussion, we learned what is meant by vouching, what are the examples of vouchings. By considering the nature of transaction, we have classified transaction into different aspects such as common, purchase, sales, bank related transactions, etc. Also, we focused and learned about what is meant by vouching and what are the objectives of the vouching. Vouching is the essence of auditing. Vouching is one of the important components of auditing. Vouching is the first stage of auditing. So, in this way, I am concluding my speech here. Thank you.